I heard my daughter-in-law plan my eviction between the clink of wine glasses and the oven timer. That's how it started 2 rooms away. My name served like a side dish at my own table in Columbus. Ohio, we'll kick him out after Christmas, Megan whispered. And the house I've paid for since 1991 suddenly felt like it didn't recognize me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I was in the kitchen trimming the ends off green beans. The maple outside the window dusted with the first December powder. Tuesday, December 10th. The sort of cold that makes the air feel metallic on your teeth. I'd left my phone on the hall bench where I sort the mail screen dark. Voice memos still open from earlier when I'd recorded the shopping list. It caught everything. The whisper, the soft laugh that followed, the squeak of my grandson's toy truck rolling over the hardwood. Proof has a way of finding me when I don't know I'll need it. January 1st latest. She added, like a calendar reminder. My son, Tyler, mumbled something about stability for the kids, and I recognized that careful tone, the one he uses when he doesn't want conflict to splash on his shirt. I folded the dish towel in my hands once. Twice muscle memory from when my wife was alive and everything in this kitchen had a purpose and a place. There's a chip in my favorite blue mug from the day we installed the new mailbox, and I stared at it to keep from saying anything reckless. I didn't storm it. Men my age are experts at quiet triage. Instead, I looked at the counter where a crumpled $2,800 furnace bill sat with a coffee ring that wasn't my Megan's promise to Venmo it tonight, was still an uncashed sentence. I slid the bill under the recipe box my wife labeled in her looping hand and breathed slow until my vision stopped pulsing. The audio kept playing in my head, even after I stopped the recording. The oven dinged in the background, world's most domestic metronome, while I counted up the things I could still hold in my hands. Title in my name alone. Property taxes paid through June. A bank letter from October that said $11,940 sat in savings. Not much runway if the floor gave way, but enough to take a step without falling. I texted my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. You up? She always is. Her front window is the lighthouse of our block. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing, I wrote. And everything. And everything. We settled on coffee the next morning, her place. Because I needed someone who knew the old version of this street. The one where people shoveled each other's walks without keeping score. I stood in the doorway of the dining room and watched my son carve the ham with the knife I sharpen every December. Megan flicked hair from her face, all angles and confidence. When she lifted her glass, I saw it clearly. They weren't planning a conversation. They were planning a removal. I went back to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I keep spare keys. They lay there like small sleeping favors. I took one out, felt the teeth with my thumb, and slid it into my pocket. If they were turning Christmas into a clock, fine. I'd keep the time. The morning after I heard the whisper, Columbus woke up gray and honest. Wednesday, December 11th. I boiled oatmeal at 6:30, and the steam fogged the small corner of the kitchen window where my wife used to draw a heart with her finger. I ate standing up, the spoon knocking once against the side of the bowl, and watched the maple out front shiver under a dusting of last night's snow. A Henderson kid down the block kicked at their inflatable Santa, and it sighed to the driveway like a wounded parade balloon. Ordinary things misbehaving. It fit the mood that I laid out the pieces of my life like I was packing it bank letter first. October 28th, a thin envelope from community savings that I'd saved under a magnet. Available balance, $11,940.22. I read it aloud, as if sounding the numbers could change their weight. Rent on a decent one-bedroom could gulp half of that in a blink. And we hadn't even gotten to deposits, movers, a bed that didn't creak. I ran a finger down the letter and thought about pension checks and Social Security and how I had always told myself, as long as I have the house, I have a spine. The house had been my pension when pensions dried up. Next, I pulled the furnace bill from beneath my wife's recipe box. $2,800 for a heat exchanger and labor. The coffee ring had dried pale brown, like a watermark from someone else's priorities. Venmo it tonight, Megan had said 2 weeks ago, pressing the bill flat with manicured indifference. I underlined the amount with a dull pencil and wrote the date again in the margin, December 3rd, so there'd be no mistaking when the promise was made and ignored. There was the Ring camera memory card. 2. I'd popped it out on Sunday to clear space. 2 short clips, both from November. The door opening quietly when I was napping in my recliner. Megan's voice soft at the threshold. Just for a minute. Their silhouettes edged into my foyer like they were touring a listing. I wasn't trawling for gotchas. I was inventorying a life I had built with receipts and salt. I made coffee at 7:15 and sat at the table where Tyler once cried over fractions he couldn't tame. The wood is scarred at my elbow from the summer of 2002 when a soldering iron kissed it by accident. My wife laughed and put a doily over the burn, then moved the doily because she said we should live with our mistakes, not hide them. I ran my palm over that scar and let the collapse happen. Men my age can do it without breaking the surface. My breathing thinned. The room tilted, then leveled. I cried into a paper towel because there were no napkins handy, and I'm a practical man even when the floor is a memory foam mat of shock. I could see a version of next month where I was a tolerated guest in a spare room with a lamp that wasn't mine. I could also see a version where a landlord said, "No pets," to a man who doesn't have a pet but hates being told no. Worst was the image Megan's whisper conjured. Me holding a single cardboard box in my own doorway while they rearranged my chairs with fresh laughter. I've been afraid plenty of times. My wife's biopsy in 2019. The night the water heater let go and we bailed the basement with plastic pitchers, but those came with honest weather. This was betrayal dressed as logistics. At 9:02 a.m., I texted Mrs. Alvarez. "Coffee?" She replied with a coffee cup emoji and a heart. I put on my brown jacket with the worn cuffs and walked carefully over patches of black ice to her porch. Her hand-knitted wreath wore a red ribbon that had seen better Decembers. Inside, her living room smelled like cinnamon and old library books. "Tell me from the beginning," she said, not unkindly. I played the audio on low. The oven's ding sounded almost comic in her serene house. When McGann's whisper came, Mrs. Alvarez's eyebrows rose together like birds. "You have the title alone, yes?" she asked. "Since 91, I said. She patted my wrist. "Then you also have options." On my way back, I stopped by the small shop on Mifflin, where Darren the locksmith keeps a jar of peppermint sticks by the register. "Changing out a tired deadbolt," I said lightly, and he handed me a little paper bag with 2 brass keys that felt new in the hand, clean and unpromised. I didn't schedule him yet. I just wanted to know how the metal felt, back home. I made a list on yellow legal paper and wrote the date in the top right corner, Wednesday, Deck 11. Under it, I wrote 3 column headers like I was creating myself a job. Document, decide, deliver. Under document I listed furnace bill, bank letter, ring cam clips, my wife's recipe box, because legacy is evidence of a different kind. Under decide, attorney, sell, rekey. Under deliver, I left blank. It felt too early to scrawl a verdict on my own life. Around noon, Tyler texted, "Need us to pick up anything for Christmas Eve?" My thumbs hovered over the screen. "Bring your favorite wine," I typed, "and then I'll handle the rest." I erased and retyped both lines twice. Send. He sent back a thumbs up and a Santa face. I studied the blue bubble for a long time, willing it to transform into an apology It couldn't carry Dot at 2:30. I walked the block for air. The cold had that metallic bite again, and every front yard had some version of cheer planted in it, reindeer with one light out, a plastic angel leaning in last night's wind. My chest unclenched on the second lap. Survival, I've learned, starts by naming the tools in reach. Mine were boring on purpose. Phone, folders, keys, locks, papers. No drama, just doors. When I got back, the sun was already thinking about quitting, and it wasn't even 4. Winter hoards daylight meaner than any landlord. I tucked the bank letter, the furnace bill, and a printout of the audio transcript into a red folder I'd bought in 2005 for tax season because my wife said red means, don't lose this. I slid the folder into the drawer beside the cutlery and set my phone's notes to remind me at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Call Ellison. Mark Ellison is a real estate attorney downtown with oak shelves and patient eyes. He helped me amend a deed in 2015 when we put the new windows in and the contractor miswrote the parcel number. Steady hands. That's what I needed. Dinner was a grilled cheese and a sliced apple. I ate it at the sink, staring at the chip in the blue mug like it was a compass. Before bed, I took one spare key from the drawer, kissed the cool metal to my lip the way a soldier does a coin, and dropped it in the pocket of the jacket I'd wear tomorrow. When the house settled at 10:11 p.m., a low wood groan in the hallway, it sounded like acceptance, not of their plan of mine. I turned off the lamp my wife loved, whispered good night to a room that didn't answer, and promised myself I'd speak to the man who could turn boundaries into paper. In the morning Thursday, December 12th, I woke before my alarm. I rode 8:45 bus downtown Ellison, 9:30 on the corner of the legal pad. Then I underlined decide twice and drew a small square beside deliver, like a box waiting for a checkmark. The collapse had done its work. The fear was catalogued. What came next would require a steady voice and documents that calculated without flinching. Tomorrow, I would take the red folder into town and ask a lawyer how you sell a house before people who love you try to occupy it. Thursday, December 12th, the air over Columbus bit clean and cold. The kind that makes your breath look like unfinished sentences. I wore my brown jacket, the one with the frayed cuff, and tucked the red folder tight under my arm like it was a passport to sanity. The bus rumbled at 8:45, half full of people trying to get somewhere warmer, and every bump felt like punctuation in a story that had suddenly started writing itself. By 9:25 a.m., I was sitting across from Mark Ellison in his office, a space that smelled of coffee and paper older than some marriages. Mark's a lawyer with hair that refuses to retire, every strand slicked back like he's defying time itself. He'd helped me once before, back in 2015, when a roofing contractor nearly double-charged me. You still got the same place on Maple Drive? He asked, flipping through my old file. Still do, I said. For now. He studied my folder as I slid it across the desk. Inside were the bank letter, the furnace bill, and the printed transcript from the audio recording. Mark read the first few lines aloud softly. We'll kick him out after Christmas. His eyes flicked up to mine. That's not an idle comment, he said. You sure you want to stay under the same roof until then? I want to stay long enough for them to see the truth, I said. Then I want to leave on my terms. He nodded slowly, pulled a legal pad closer. Okay, cleanest root cell before January. Titles only in your name, so no consent required. You can list quietly private showing, cash buyer preferred. You can also change locks, provided they're just guests, not tenants. We'll document everything. Rekey date, listing date, offer date, closing date. If they try to contest, paper wins. Paper always wins, I echoed. He wrote out a checklist in that neat, lawyerly script. Engage. A realtor discreetly rekey front door and garage. Note dates. Store valuables offsite. Notify HOA for resale disclosure. Close before January 3rd if possible. Dana Brooks, he added, is reliable and quiet. Works out of Worthington. Tell her I sent you. By the time I left his office at 10:40, the wind had picked up and the courthouse bell sounded distant, like a heartbeat reminding me time was moving. I walked 2 blocks to a diner for coffee and a slice of pie I didn't taste. I was already thinking logistics, keys, locks, timing, storage. Every act of betrayal deserves a measured counter and paperwork. At 3:15 p.m., I met Dana Brooks outside my house. She was in her early 40s, practical smile, boots built for Midwestern driveways. Mark filled me in, she said, extending her hand. We can do this quietly. Holiday season works in your favor, fewer eyes, more serious buyers. She scanned the house. You've kept it immaculate. Don't stage it sterile, just real. A wreath, warm lights. Lived-in cells. We sat at the kitchen table, and I handed her the key I'd had cut at Darren's shop. Fresh locks going in Saturday, I said. She nodded. Keep it legal, just protective. I'll line up a soft launch to my network starting December 15th. 2. Showing windows the following week, 21st and 22nd. We price at $689,000. And see if we can push it to $699,900. If we get a bite. She flipped open her tablet and snapped discrete photos of the living room, kitchen, and maple outside. You planted that tree yourself? She asked. 91, I said. It's got more roots than half this town. When she left, I stood by the window and watched her taillights fade down the block. The maple caught the wind, scattering a few last brown leaves onto the snow. I thought about my wife's laugh echoing off these walls and how she'd once said, if people ever stop seeing the value in what you build, sell it before they ruin it. That night I sat at my desk and opened a blank envelope. I wrote in careful penmanship, to my family, open after grace. Then I tucked it in my drawer beside the recipe box. A note, a clue, a boundary. Friday, December 13th, I stopped at the hardware store again. Bought 2 brass nameplates, one for the recipe box, one for the red folder, and a small realtor's lockbox for the front doorknob. Paid cash. The clerk handed me the bag, and I told him, it's for peace of mind. He smiled, not knowing I meant that literally. Before bed, I walked through every room, touching the corners, turning off lights slowly like I was closing chapters. In the hallway mirror, I looked older but lighter, like a man drafting the last will of his patients. I poured 1 whiskey neat and toasted the silence. Here's the documents, I whispered, and to men who still believe signatures mean something. Outside, snow fell soft and sure, burying footprints and intentions alike. But inside that house, for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. The betrayal wasn't gone. It was archived. And tomorrow, the planning would turn into movement. Saturday, December 14th. Started like a whisper, no wind, no noise. Just me and the ticking of the wall clock that's been off by 3 minutes since my wife passed. I poured coffee, black, no sugar, and spread out the documents on the table like I was assembling a map. Bank letter, furnace bill, title copy, listing draft. All lined up like soldiers, waiting for orders. At 9:30 a.m., I called Darren, the locksmith. You still got those new brass keys? I asked. Sure do. You want me over today? 2 o'clock, I said. Bring a fresh deadbolt and keypad change. He showed up on the dot, smelling faintly of smoke and peppermint sticks. While he worked, the sound of the drill bit into the old lock felt surgical, steady, necessary. When he was done, he handed me 2 identical brass keys. Clean slate, he said. Anyone had copies of the old ones? I nodded. Not anymore. He smiled. Then Merry Christmas, I guess. By 3 p.m., I'd already texted Dana Brooks confirming that the quiet listing was live. We'll open for 2 private showings next weekend, she wrote. Both cash-ready buyers. Keep the house lived in, warm, and avoid family clutter if possible. Our efficiency felt like oxygen. That night, I went through my filing cabinet and pulled every home receipt I'd ever saved. Roof replacement. July 2008, $12,400. Window set. April 2015, $9,100. Water heater. May 2019, $1,300. Each number told a story of years. I traded sweat for structure. I photographed each receipt under the kitchen light. Timestamp visible in the corner. Legacy captured in pixels. Sunday morning, December 15th, Mrs. Alvarez stopped by with a plate of tamales. I saw a strange SUV outside yesterday, she said casually. Silver, tinted windows. Not from the block. I smiled. Probably a buyer. She squinted. Good. Make sure they deserve it. By December 16th, Dana texted that the first potential buyer wanted to see the house. December 21st at 9 a.m. and the second at 10:30 a.m. I marked it on my wall. Calendar in red pen just below. Christmas Eve dinner. The next few days. I cleaned the house room by room, not like a tenant, but like a man preparing an exhibit. I dusted the mantel where my wife's photo still smiled, straightened the couch cushions, polished the mailbox key, and replaced a burnt bulb in the porch light. Every movement carried a quiet rhythm of closure. At 6:45 p.m. on December 19th, I stood outside and watched the sunset burn gold over Maple Drive. Across the street, the Hendersons were stringing up another row of lights. I could hear Megan's laughter from next door when she arrived to drop off some Christmas wrapping paper for the kids. She didn't come inside, but I watched from the window. She pointed at my maple tree and told my son something that made him grin. Probably another plan for after Christmas. She waved politely when she saw me through the window. Everything ready for Christmas Eve, Dad? She called. Almost, I said, holding up a dish towel like I'd been cooking. Just tying up loose ends. Inside, the red folder sat open on the table. Inside it, signed listing agreement, December 15th. Attorney retainer letter, Dec. 13. Bank verification slip. A printed text from Dana. Cash buyers confirmed for December 21st showing. Monday, December 20th. Darren came again to reprogram the garage keypad. I set the new code to the year I met my wife, 1982. The number felt like armor. After he left, I slipped the old keypad sticker into the red folder, labeling it retired code. December 20th, 2:40 p.m. Precision mattered. Mark Ellison had taught me that paperwork only wins if you keep the breadcrumbs. That night, I practiced calm in the mirror. Thank you for coming, I said, imagining the buyers. Take your time. Then I practiced the other line I'd need soon. The one for the dinner reveal. Open the envelopes after grace. The words rolled clean and cold off my tongue. Saturday morning, December 21st, 8:45 a.m. Dana arrived with a soft knock. She'd brought pastries and that crisp scent of professional calm. The first buyers, a middle-aged couple from Westerville, walked through the door. At 9:03 a.m., the woman paused by the maple tree visible through the window. My mother had one, she said softly. She probably took better care of hers, I replied, and she smiled. At 10:47 a.m. The second buyer, a quiet man in a heavy coat, asked, Any rental history? No, I said. It's my home. They both left with nods and quiet looks that said the kind of things polite people never voice aloud. Dana gave me a small smile. "We'll have something soon," she said. That evening, I poured myself tea and stared at the tree one last time through the frost-edged glass. A light wind moved the branches like an old friend waving goodbye. My phone buzzed. Dana, offer incoming tonight, inspection waived, 21-day close. At 9:52 p.m., the email came through. Offer price, $699,900. Closing date, January 3rd. Cash. I printed the document, laid it beside the $2,800 furnace bill, and smiled at the symmetry. One was a promise they broke. The other was a promise I'd made to myself and kept. Tomorrow, I'd sign. And then I'd set the table for Christmas Eve. By Monday, December 23rd, the air outside felt sharper, like winter had teeth. The maple out front stood bare now, branches twitching against a sky the color of pewter. Inside, the house was glowing warm, but underneath the cinnamon candles and pine garland, a slow hum of tension ran through everything I touched. Every flick of the light switch, every glance at the clock, every time the phone buzzed, each one sounded like a countdown. The offer had been finalized the night before. $699,900. All cash, closing January 3rd. Possession 4 p.m. My lawyer, Mark Ellison, confirmed it by email at 8:13 a.m. sharp. Funds cleared, escrow verified, inspection waived. Proceed with confidence. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading that one phrase again, proceed with confidence. No one had said that to me in years. At 10 a.m., I took the offer papers from the red folder, spread them neatly on the kitchen table beside the $2,800 furnace bill, and uncapped my pen. I signed my name slow, deliberate, centered under seller. The sound of that pen gliding across paper felt cleaner than any revenge fantasy I could have imagined. Then came the next step. Christmas Eve dinner was tomorrow. The night they'd planned to smile, toast, and pretend the future was theirs to rearrange. The night before my move toward freedom, I pulled a small stack of red envelopes from my desk drawer. Each one carried a name written in my wife's looping cursive, a handwriting I'd traced from an old box of holiday tags. Under each name, I slipped a folded sheet of paper, a simple letter that read, "Thank you for sharing this home with me. Possession transfers January 3rd, 4 p.m. Offer accepted. New owners in place. Merry Christmas." At the bottom of each page, I signed only Dad. In mine. I added something different, a condo keycard taped inside, and a note that said, "My next chapter." When I sealed the envelopes, I felt that mix of nerves and calm that only people who have planned something irreversible can understand. It wasn't gloating. It was resolved. At noon, my son Tyler stopped by. He was carrying 2 bags of gifts, one hand already on his phone. "Megan said to drop these early," he said. I nodded and took them, feeling the weight. Inside the top bag, I noticed a small square box, probably jewelry. Something he couldn't really afford. The debt he'd hinted at in passing now hung invisible but thick between us. "Dad, you sure you want to host this year?" he asked. "You've done enough." I smiled gently. "It's tradition. One last time." He nodded. "Okay. Oh, do you still have that spare key I gave you?" "The one we left when we were redoing the back door." I opened the drawer, pulled it out, and placed it in his palm. "Need to have them matched," I said simply. He didn't notice how hard my hand shook when I let go. At 2:12 p.m., Megan texted, "Should we bring the good wine?" I typed back, "Bring your favorite." I spent the evening preparing roasting ham, setting the table, polishing the silverware my wife adored. The dining room looked beautiful, soft candlelight, plates gleaming, and right at the head of the table, an empty chair. I placed my own red envelope in front of it, slightly tilted, the keycard glinting faintly under the light. By 6 p.m., I stepped outside for air. Mrs. Alvarez waved from across the street, her hands tucked in her robe sleeves. "Everything ready?" she asked. "Everything's in order," I said. She nodded knowingly. "Then sleep early. Tomorrow needs steady hands." That night, I didn't sleep much. I went over the plan in my head again, every step. The sale closed in 10 days. The reveal would happen tomorrow. I'd host dinner, say grace, and when the time was right, I'd ask them to open their envelopes. I imagined their faces, the confusion first, then realization. The sound of paper rustling louder than their laughter at 3:07 a.m. I got out of bed, walked into the kitchen, and looked out the window. Snow had started falling again, slow, wide flakes that made the streetlights shimmer. On the counter, the red folder waited, closed and perfectly square. I rested my hand on it. "This house was my pension," I whispered. "Not your plan." In that moment, I felt the kind of peace that comes only after months of disbelief, when anger has cooled into purpose. The kind of peace that smells like cold air and freedom. When dawn came on December 24th, I brewed a pot of coffee, ironed a clean shirt, and laid out the holiday plates. Each red envelope waited patiently under the china, tucked half under the placemats like hidden seeds. The stage was set. Tomorrow, they'd open the truth. Christmas Eve, Tuesday, December 24th. The kind of day where everything looks gentle white snow. Soft light, family laughter, but underneath it all, you can feel the crack. I woke before sunrise. The house was silent, except for the heater humming low in the vents. I made coffee, checked the thermostat, the same furnace they never paid for, and sat for a minute in the glow of the tree. The maple outside stood bare and proud, its branches casting long shadows on the snow. Like a set of ribs stopped by 10 a.m., I'd finished glazing the ham and setting the last of the table. Every plate had a red envelope tucked just beneath it, the name written in my wife's looping cursive. Her handwriting was the first thing they'd see. My own envelope sat at the head of the table, empty chair, waiting. The house smelled of cinnamon, sugar, and something else, truth warming in the oven at 6:15 p.m. Headlights turned up the driveway. I wiped my hands on the towel and forced my shoulders to drop. Calm, not cold. Tyler came in first, arms full of gifts, cheeks flushed from the cold. Behind him, Megan swept in like she owned the holiday-perfect hair, bright smile, camera already out. "Merry Christmas, Dad," she sang, kissing the air near my cheek. "Evening," I said, steady. "You made it." The kids ran to the tree, tearing ribbons. The room filled with sound, the kind that hides the truth if you let it. I carved the ham, poured wine, laughed in the right places. Megan complimented the glaze. "Better than honey-baked," she said. "Glad you think so," I replied. "It's my wife's recipe." She never liked shortcuts. Dinner rolled on like any holiday silver clinking. Polite conversation, the hum of routine. Until I brought up the furnace. "Still waiting on that $2,800 you promised." "Mag," I said, casually, pouring myself more wine. She froze just a second too long. "Oh, that. I'll Venmo you after New Year. We've had some expenses." I nodded. "I bet you have." The room went still. Tyler shifted in his seat. "Dad, it's Christmas," he said softly. I smiled. "Exactly." I let the silence stretch just long enough to make the air feel heavy. Then I raised my glass. "Before dessert," I said, "I'd like to start a new tradition." Megan leaned forward, smiling again. "Oh? What's that?" I gestured to the red envelopes. "Each of you has one. Don't open them yet?" Tyler laughed nervously. "Dad, what is this? A treasure hunt?" "Something like that," I said. "We'll open them together. After grace." I bowed my head, said the prayer slow and simple. When I finished, the kids clapped softly. Then I looked up and said, Now. Paper rustled. For a moment, no one spoke. Just the sound of folds opening, eyes scanning, confusion blooming like frost. Megan was the first to react. Her smile melted away. What is this? Tyler looked up from his page, his voice tight. Dad, you sold the house? I took a sip of wine. I did. Closed January 3rd, 4 p.m. full cash offer. Inspection waived. Megan blinked hard. You can't. This is your family's home. It was my wife's dream, I said quietly. And mine. But you two made other plans. Her cheeks flamed red. We never. I slid the printed transcript from the red folder onto the table. The one from December 10th, where her whisper was caught clean between the clink of dishes and the oven timer. We'll kick him out after Christmas. The sound file was queued on my phone, volume low. I pressed play. Her voice filled the air, brittle and unmistakable. The oven dinged at the same place it had that night. The kids stopped fidgeting. Tyler's face went pale. Dad, I held up a hand. You didn't stop her. That's the same thing as agreeing. Then I placed the second piece of proof beside the transcript, a printout of the $699,900 offer, with the realtor's signature. The closing date highlighted in yellow. This, I said, tapping the page, is the sound of boundaries being rebuilt. Megan shoved her chair back. You went behind our backs. I cut her off, voice calm but sharp. No, I went behind your plans. You were going to take my roof. I just sold it before you could. Tyler leaned forward, palms open. Dad, please, the kids. They'll be fine, I said softly. Children recover faster than grown-ups pretending to be victims. The room went quiet, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Then, I reached for the two small boxes I'd hidden under the tablecloth. One held the spare key I'd reclaimed. The other held the printed garage code log showing the keypad reset. I placed them side by side. I changed the locks December 20th. New code as of the 21st. I don't keep doors open for people who whisper about when to close them. Megan's lips trembled. Where will we go? I tilted my head. You have your own lease. Signed September 1st. I checked the county records. Tyler looked at me, tears forming. You checked my lease? Just the filing date, I said. A father likes to know when his son commits to something. Megan looked down at her paper again, reading the line that said possession transfers January 3rd at 4 p.m. Her jaw tightened. You're kicking us out. I stood, slow and steady. No, Megan, I'm freeing myself. No one moved for a full 30 seconds. The only sound was the soft hiss of the heater, the same one I'd paid for, humming faithfully beneath their silence. Finally, I said, desserts in the fridge. You're welcome to stay and finish it. But they didn't. Single quotes to not. Megan grabbed her coat, muttering curses she wouldn't have dared say to my wife. Tyler hesitated at the door. Dad, I didn't mean for... I know, I said. That's the problem. When the door closed behind them, I walked back to the table and sat down in the empty chair. The envelopes lay open like red petals. The proof folder gleamed under the candlelight outside. Snow started falling again, quiet, relentless, honest, and I thought, justice doesn't shout. It signs documents. Tomorrow, the sold sign would go up. But tonight, the silence was victory enough. Christmas morning came in cold and clean. Wednesday, December 25th. The house was quiet, too quiet for what used to be the noisiest day of the year. The wrapping paper that once cluttered the floor wasn't there. No laughter, no coffee brewing upstairs, no sound of Tyler dragging the kids down the hall to see what Santa left at Grandpa's. Just the hum of my heater, loyal and expensive. I brewed a pot of coffee anyway. Old habits die last. While it percolated, I stared out at the maple tree, the one still standing guard like an old soldier who's seen too much. Snow had piled against its roots overnight. I thought about last night, the look on Megan's face when she realized the house was gone, the way Tyler's voice cracked on the word Dad. For years, I'd been the quiet background to their ambitions. Now, suddenly, I was the headline dot at 9:20 a.m. My phone buzzed. A message from Tyler. Dad, we need to talk. Megan's upset. Can we come by today? I let the message sit unread for 5 minutes, just breathing, then replied, not today. You need time to think. So do I. He didn't answer. By 10 a.m., Mrs. Alvarez knocked on my door with a casserole dish. Saw the lights on, she said. You okay? I smiled faintly. Define okay. She stepped inside, lowering her voice. I heard shouting last night. They left fast. I poured her a cup of coffee and slid the envelope from the counter, the one labeled proof. Inside, I'd kept a copy of the signed offer, the audio transcript, and the garage rekey invoice. She read the first few lines and shook her head. You were right to protect yourself. People forget papers tell the truth longer than people do. When she left, I sat down at the dining table again. The candles had burned low, leaving wax puddles that hardened like tiny lakes on the linen. The red envelopes were still there, opened and slightly crumpled. I gathered them carefully into the red folder and labeled it Christmas Eve 2019. Final dinner at 11:45. I called Mark Ellison. Offer confirmed, I said. They know. His voice was calm, efficient. Good. You're protected legally. Funds will clear January 3rd. Keep communication to text and email from now on. No phone calls without documentation. Understood. When I hung up, I noticed something small, a wine glass still on the counter. The lipstick stain faint and pink. Megan's. I picked it up, looked at it against the light, then set it in the sink and ran the tap. The water hissed, the stain dissolved, and I realized that was what peace sounded like. That afternoon, I took down half the ornaments from the tree. Each one had a story. The glass angel from 1993, when my wife beat her first round of chemo. The wooden train from 2001, the year Tyler got his first job. I boxed them slowly, labeling each ornament by year with a black marker. When I reached the star, I hesitated. It had a tiny chip near the tip, same as my blue mug. Some things survived just slightly imperfect. I set it aside for my new place at 2 p.m. There was another text from Tyler. Megan's threatening to call a lawyer. Says you tricked us. I told her it's your name on the deed, but she's furious. I typed back, she's welcome to call whoever she wants. I have all the receipts. He didn't reply, but a few minutes later, another message came through, this time shorter. Dad, I'm sorry. 3 words, but heavy enough to fill the room. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and watched the clock at 4 p.m. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, Megan stood there alone, face red from the cold and the effort of pretending not to be furious. You humiliated us, she said without preamble. In front of the kids. They didn't seem humiliated, I said quietly. Just surprised. A voice rose. You could have talked to us first. I did, I said. For years. You just never listened. She blinked, caught off guard by the evenness of my tone. You blindsided your own son. I stepped back, motioned toward the foyer. No, Megan, I showed him the truth you'd already built behind my back. She folded her arms, trembling, not from cold, but from the loss of control. Where are we supposed to live? I met her eyes. You already have a lease. September 1st, right? I checked. Her jaw tightened. You can't just... Actually, I said, reaching for the folder. I can. And I did. The house closes January 3rd. You have until then to collect anything you left here. I'll box what's yours, label it, and leave it by the porch. No surprises. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she muttered, "You're cruel." I shook my head. "No, I'm clear." She turned and stormed down the walkway, boots crunching in the snow. I waited until her car started before I exhaled. Inside, the house felt lighter. Every inch of it hummed with quiet relief, like it was finally siding with me. That evening, I microwaved leftovers, ham and potatoes, and ate them at the same table where the world had turned the night before. The light above flickered once, and I smiled at the imperfection. My wife would have teased me for not fixing it sooner. I raised my glass to the empty chair across from me. "We did it, honey," I said. "They wanted to take our home, and instead, we sold it on our terms." When the night settled, I walked outside one last time. The sold sign hadn't been planted yet, but in my mind, I could already see it. Red, white, bold. Proof that sometimes justice doesn't come from shouting. It comes from signatures and silence. Tomorrow, that sign would go up. And when it did, everyone on Maple Drive would know the truth. The old man they thought was too soft to fight had drawn the sharpest line of all. The day after Christmas began with a sound I hadn't heard in years, absolute quiet that didn't feel lonely. No TV murmuring from the living room. No Megan's voice bleating through the phone about plans or upgrades. Just a steady whisper of wham through the maple outside and the creak of the floorboards as the furnace kicked in again, paid for, owned, and warming me alone. At 8:02 a.m. My phone lit up with an email from Dana Brooks. Subject line: Offer final. Wire verification confirmed. I opened it slowly, savoring the words. Funds cleared. Closing appointment set for January 3rd. 4 p.m. Buyer request, no extensions. Congratulations, Mr. Holbrook. I stared at that word, congratulations. It felt foreign. I poured coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and read it again out loud. Congratulations. The sound of it made the air lighter. At 9:15 a.m., I called Mark Ellison. Everything's official? Locked and loaded, he said. I'll handle the closing packet. You'll sign. Funds move into escrow, and the condo deposit will transfer automatically. You did well, John. Justice isn't about doing well, I told him. It's about stopping the wrong people from thinking they can. He laughed softly. Either way, you stopped them. By noon, the sold rider was snapped onto the sign in my yard. Dana texted me a photo, red letters, clean and bold against the white snow. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? She wrote. It looks honest, I replied. Around 2 p.m., I walked next door to Mrs. Alvarez. She was already at her window, watching the sign go up like it was a parade float. So it's done? She asked, smiling. It's done, I said. She hugged me tight. You taught them something they'll never forget. Dignity's a kind of quiet war, you know? You fought it well. That afternoon, I went to the condo complex by the river to meet the property manager and finalize my move-in. The lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and new carpet, fresh beginnings always do. The view faced west, overlooking the Scioto, gray and endless. You'll love the sunsets, the manager said, handing me the keycard. They look like forgiveness. By 4 p.m., I was back home. Tyler's text came through just as I parked. Megan's gone to her sister's. I wanted to see you. I told him to come over. He arrived 20 minutes later, face pale, hands stuffed in his coat pockets. No Megan, no kids. Just him. I'm sorry, Dad, he said the second he stepped in. I should have stopped her. She said you were lonely, that we were doing what's best for everyone. I knew it sounded wrong, but I didn't want to fight. I let him talk. Sometimes silence is the only honest teacher. When he finished, I opened the red folder and slid a single sheet across the table. The audio transcript. This isn't for punishment, I said. It's for memory. So you'll remember what silence costs. He read it, eyes glistening. You recorded that? Accidentally. My phone caught it. He nodded slowly, then whispered, "She's embarrassed, angry." "Good," I said. "That means she felt something." He exhaled, then looked at me differently, like a man seeing a father instead of a fallback. "You're moving?" "Next week," I said. "Condo near the river. 15 minutes away. You can visit any time you come without guilt." He nodded again. "Can the kids still see the tree?" "They can visit the new owners," I said. I told them they're welcome to keep it. "I'll plant a new one by the river." Before he left, I handed him a small envelope. Inside was a business card for a credit counselor. "You mentioned debt," I said. "Start here. Take your time, but start." He blinked hard. "You're not mad?" "I'm done being mad," I said. "Anger's just energy I could spend somewhere better." When he left, the air felt soft again. That night, I sat in my recliner, the closing packet resting on my lap, and turned on the small lamp beside me. I signed where Mark had marked the tabs. Each signature was like reclaiming an inch of ground. When I finished, I closed the folder and whispered, "Done." Outside, the sold sign reflected the porch light, glowing faintly in the dark. The street was still. Justice didn't come in courtrooms or shouted apologies. It came in contracts, in numbers, in a father finally refusing to be disposable. As I turned off the lamp, I said it one more time to no one but the air. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." And I finally took myself back. Friday, January 4th. My first morning waking up in the new condo by the river. The walls smelled like paint and possibility. No ticking clock here yet, just the hum of a heater that didn't groan like the old one. I sat on the edge of the bed, sunlight hitting the blinds, and realized something simple. I didn't owe anyone the quiet version of myself anymore. The view outside was silver, the Scioto River gliding slow, frozen in parts but moving underneath. It looked like resilience. I made coffee in a single-cup machine and drank it while standing by the window. I thought about that old house on Maple Drive. By now, Dana and Mark would have finished closing. The wire transfer hit escrow at 4 p.m. yesterday, and the new owner's nice couple from Westerville were likely unpacking boxes, breathing new life into the space. I didn't feel loss, just release. I unpacked slowly. First the recipe box, my wife's handwriting looping across each index carved banana bread. Her Christmas ham glaze, the chicken soup she swore could cure anything but heartbreak. I wiped the box clean and placed it on the counter beside the coffee pot. Next came the brass nameplate I'd engraved. Holbrook Family, 1982 to 2019. A beginning and an end in one neat line. Around noon, Tyler texted. We drove by the house. "The sold sign looks strange there," I replied. "It's supposed to. New stories need new ground." He sent back a single thumbs-up emoji. It was small, but I felt the weight of it. Maybe that was his way of saying thank you, or maybe he just didn't know how to start the kind of conversation that matters. Either way, it was something. Later that day, I stopped by the church downtown for the Friday service. I hadn't been since my wife's memorial. The same usher, Mr. Dorsey, greeted me with a handshake that felt like old oak. "Good to see you, John," he said. "How's the house?" "Sold," I answered. "Best decision I ever made." He chuckled softly. Sometimes letting go is the only kind of forgiveness that sticks. During the quiet prayer that followed, I lit a candle for my wife. The flame swayed gently, like it recognized me. "We did it," I whispered. "They learned." That night, I cooked dinner in Silence pan-seared salmon, the kind my wife used to burn on purpose because she liked the crisp edges. I ate at the small table near the balcony, watching headlights skim the riverbank below. The city lights reflected on the water like broken jewelry. I thought about Megan, her ambition, her whisper, the arrogance of assuming my silence meant weakness. Maybe one day she'd understand the difference between generosity and surrender. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I'd stop carrying her lesson. And I thought about Tyler, the boy who used to leave me Father's Day cards with stick figures. The man who'd lost his compass for a while but still had time to find it again. I knew he was trying. Sometimes that's all forgiveness really asks for effort, not perfection. At 8:45 p.m., Mrs. Alvarez called. "Just checking on you," she said. "It's too quiet on the street without your light on." "I'm fine," I told her. "The river keeps me company." "You always did like water," she said. "It washes things clean." After we hung up, I sat back in the recliner by the window and opened my notebook. I wrote a single line across the top of the page. The story we tell after betrayal should not star the betrayer. Below it, I added, "Legacy isn't a house. It's proof you stood up before someone mistook your kindness for absence." I closed the notebook and smiled. Out the window, the moonlight shimmered on the river's surface, the ice glinting like quiet applause. The kind only truth earns. Tomorrow, I'd planned a new maple sapling by the condo entrance, a promise to myself that roots could start anywhere. And when spring came, I decided I'd invite Tyler and the kids over to help me water it. Because sometimes, even after everything, the best kind of revenge is peace that doesn't need to be explained. Monday, January 6th. The second week in my condo felt strange, like I was visiting my own life, but starting to settle in. The place still smelled faintly of cardboard boxes and new carpet glue. Outside, the river thawed in streaks under a rare strip of sun. I stood on my small balcony with a mug of coffee, watching a man jog by in a red hoodie, his breath puffing white. Down below, a maintenance worker was brushing salt across the icy path. Quiet life. Predictable life. Mine again. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Mrs. Alvarez, they came back to your old place yesterday," she said. "Who?" "Your son and that woman. They parked, sat in the car a long time. Didn't go in. Just stared at the sign." I thanked her, promised to stop by soon. I didn't need to ask how they looked. Grief has a universal posture: shoulders forward, hands idle. At 11:30 a.m., I drove into town to deliver a few final documents to Mark Ellison, closing packet receipts. The check stub for my condo deposit, $15,000. His assistant took them, smiling. "Mr. Ellison said to tell you it was a clean deal start to finish. He likes clients who come prepared." I grinned. Tell him preparation's cheaper than regret. Afterward, I treated myself to lunch at a diner off Riverside Drive, the same kind of place my wife used to love. Vinyl booths. A waitress who calls everyone sweetheart. I ordered meatloaf and coffee and listened to the clatter of dishes, the radio humming low. Across from me, a father and son were arguing gently over a math worksheet. "Carry the one," the dad said. "Always carry the one." I smiled to myself. Back home, a text from Tyler waited. "Kids miss you. Can we come by next Sunday?" "Bring cocoa mix," I replied. "I'll handle the rest." That evening, I drove back to Maple Drive one last time. The neighborhood looked the same but quieter without my porch light. The new owners had moved in, a couple in their 40s. Through the window, I could see boxes labeled kitchen and books. They'd already hung a wreath. I parked across the street, engine off, and just watched. The sold sign was gone now, replaced by a clean white post. I didn't feel nostalgia. Just closure. Mrs. Alvarez spotted me from her window and came outside in her robe and slippers. "You came to say goodbye," she said. "Just checking the view," I answered. She handed me a paper bag, 3 tamales, and a note folded on top. The note read, "People talk. They say you outsmarted them. I say you remembered who you were." I thanked her, hugged her once, and promised to visit when the weather warmed. Back at the condo, I unpacked the last box old family photos. One of Tyler at 10, grinning with a missing tooth, his mother's arm around him. Another from our 25th anniversary, both of us standing in front of the same maple tree that had outlived our marriage, our mortgage, and now our patience. I kept that photo out and placed it on my new mantle. The next morning, January 7th, the world looked different. My mornings didn't start with whispered disrespect or passive-aggressive smiles. They started with quiet. Freedom has a sound. It's not loud. It's steady, like a train that finally found its track again. Later that week, I got a small envelope in the mail return address from Tyler's apartment. Inside was a hand-drawn picture from my granddaughter, a big tree by a river, stick figure me holding a watering can. At the bottom, she'd written in careful letters, "Grandpa's new tree." I smiled until my throat ached. On January 9th, Tyler texted a photo of the kids bundled in coats by the river. "They missed the swing," he wrote. I sent back a picture of a small maple sapling I'd planted near my building's entrance, roots tucked under frost. "This one's ours now." I typed dot. He replied with a red heart. I didn't need anything more than that dot every so often. I still drive past Maple Drive on errands. The house looks smaller now, almost shy under the new owner's curtains. But when I catch my reflection in the rearview mirror, I see something my son will see one day too. A man who finally learned that the loudest revenge is peace and that justice, once signed, doesn't need to speak twice. Tuesday, January 14th. A week of silence had settled in like snowlight, but everywhere. The condo had started to feel like home. My coffee mug left a small circle on the kitchen counter each morning, and I didn't wipe it up right away. Freedom doesn't need to be spotless. It just needs to be mine. That morning, the mail slid through the slot with its usual whisper. Bills, flyers, a church bulletin. But one envelope caught my eye, glossy, heavy stock with gold lettering that read, "Your dream home awaits." The sender? Megan's favorite realtor. I almost laughed. The irony was too sharp to ignore. I tore it open and read, "Start your right. Trade up to the home you've always deserved." Trade up. Deserved. Two words that once justified every betrayal I just survived. I stood there a moment, thumb tracing the edges of that postcard. Then I smiled, folded it neatly in half, and slipped it into my red folder, the same one that had started it all. Between the furnace bill and the closing documents, it belonged there. My final receipt from Fate. Around noon, I took a walk along the Scioto River Trail. The air had thawed slightly, the ice breaking apart into small, drifting plates. Sunlight shimmered over them like confetti. A young couple jogged past, laughing, holding hands. I realized I didn't envy them. I pitied them a little. They hadn't learned yet that love without honesty is just decoration. When I came home, my phone buzzed. A message from Tyler. "Kids want to see you this Sunday. Cocoa and marshmallows?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. I could almost hear his sigh through the text. Short words, but they carried a promise. Effort. I could work with effort. At 4:15 p.m., I sat by the window, the river's reflection stretching across the glass, and opened my wife's recipe box. The card on top was for maple glazed salmon, her handwriting looping like music. I smiled and read the note she'd scrawled in the margin years ago. "Don't forget sweet before the bitter." That line hit harder now than ever. Maybe she knew. Maybe she always did. As the sun dipped low, I poured a small glass of whiskey and toasted the empty chair across from me. "We made it," I whispered. "We built a life." And when they tried to take the walls, we sold the foundation instead. The phone buzzed again, this time an email notification. From Dana Brooks. Subject: Final statement. Holbrook sale. I opened it, expecting numbers and signatures. But at the bottom, Dana had added a note. The buyer said they're keeping your maple swing for their grandchildren. They wanted you to know. For a long time, I just stared at that sentence. I could see it so clearly. The swing rocking gently under that old tree. Children laughing where Betrayal once sat whispering. It didn't sting. It felt right. The house had new laughter now. Maybe that's how healing sounds through someone else's joy. I closed the email and wrote a note in my journal. Sometimes the world redeems what we can't forgive ourselves for. I couldn't save my family's trust, but I saved our dignity. That's something. Evening came soft and blue. The river outside darkened to glass. I lit one small candle and placed it by the window, like my wife used to during storms. It flickered once, twice, steady. Before bed, I opened the red folder one last time. The papers were crisp and final dates, deeds, signatures. I slid the realtor postcard in the morning Thursday. To Sam inside the back sleeve and wrote across it in pen. The end of one address. Then, on a clean page in my notebook, I wrote the closing line of this chapter, an aphorism for anyone who's ever been underestimated, betrayed, or quietly erased. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. And I finally took myself back. I set down the pen, exhaled, and looked out at the river one last time that night. The water was still moving, slow but sure, like time, like peace, like justice that no longer needs an audience.